Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Western Canada, the home of 2 NDP governments. Woo! As you know, we're on Treaty 1 territory and on the homeland of the Métis Nation, and I want to thank them for welcoming us here this week. And in the brief time I have with you today, I'm going to be covering the outstanding work across 4 great provinces, so I'm going to dive right in. As across the Western region, we have activists who are giving up their time and making sacrifices to make our great union better. Many of our activists have volunteered to serve on our 2 regional councils here in the West or as political action coordinators. I'm going to ask anyone who's serving in any of those roles or as coordinators to stand. I know we've emptied out a bit, but I really want you to acknowledge the work you do. You go above and beyond, so thank you. Give yourselves a hand. We have 2 very highly active regional councils. Our Prairie Regional Council is chaired by NEB member Christy Best. Thank you, Christy. Thanks. And our BC Regional Council is chaired by NEB member Ben Williams. Thank you both for your outstanding leadership. Each of our councils has a very strong executive board and formidable standing committees that are representative of our region and the diversity of our union. The standing committees, as many of you know, are Aboriginal and Workers of Color, EFAP Addictions, LGBTQ, OHS and the Environment, Political Action, Women's Rights, Workers with Disabilities, and Young Workers. And as I've said, we have had a number of fantastic political action coordinators engaging and involving our members in several campaigns across the region this past year. So to everyone in this room, beyond the BC Regional Council, the Prairie Regional Council, executive standing committees, to all of you Unifor locals, leaders, activists, political activists, to our dedicated and strong staff in the region, to our area directors, Don Boucher, Paul Mackay, and Gavin McGarrigle, thank you for all the work you all do to build this great union. Give yourselves a hand. Out here in Western Canada, you could say we have 2 types of governments. Excuse me, I have the same problem as Bob had with his voice. So the 2 types are the cut and fire and the build and hire. Let's start with the woman who coined that phrase and who is leading the build and hire movement. Rachel Notley's government in Alberta is 2 years into her mandate. And Unifor has played a very important role advising the government on everything from progressive changes on the labor code to being a measured voice for just transition for workers in carbon-intensive industries. Together with our allies and Unifor Local 445 member, president of the Alberta Federation of Labour, Gil McGowan, we're making very constructive contributions that will help Alberta move towards a diversified and sustainable future. And I won't claim that I love every decision her government has taken, but Unifor is doing the principled thing, what is principled during an NDP reign, fighting for our members' rights and doing everything in our power to create the political space for a progressive government to make real gains for working people. So that's been our focus. But I've got to say, noted social dinosaur Jason Kenney is poised to unite the far right in Alberta, and I think Unifor can play a really critical role in helping the Notley government get re-elected in 2019. So the outreach training for her re-election starts very soon this fall, and we will be there to ensure that working Albertan families have their voices heard. And by the way, build and hire works. Alberta has the strongest growth in Canada this year and is poised to have the strongest economic growth for the next 3 years. But here in Manitoba, the task is different. It also revolves around outreach and training. You know, you've heard about the right-wing government elected here in April 2016, and they acted very fast to strip the province's most vulnerable of certain rights to unionize, and Jerry spoke about this. Premier Brian Pallister has most recently turned his sights on the province's unionized workforce in very far-reaching and likely illegal wage freezes that are totally circumventing collective bargaining and depressing the economy here. And while the fight back here has just begun, our job is clear. We will resist, we will fight, we will build, and we will win. Unifor has undertaken the important process of engaging with our members in a much deeper way to ensure that we all know exactly what is at stake if Pallister has a free hand to attack our rights. We're also doing our part to rebuild the NDP in this province. I'm thrilled to announce that our union is backing Wab Kinew, MLA for Fort Rouge, for the next leader of the Manitoba NDP. After hearing Wab's remarks yesterday, I think you'll agree the party's future is very bright. But Brother Wab cannot do it alone. During the next 3 years of the Pallister government, Unifor activists are going to have to dig deep and do the hard work that is required to build solidarity within our ranks, to establish new connections in the community and around the whole province and push back hard. I know that the National Executive Board has your back. We've recently joined the lawsuit against Brian Pallister's unethical and wrong-headed public wage freeze. It's known as Bill 28. The Manitoba Fight Back is a top priority for our union. Next door in Saskatchewan, the fight back is starting to pay off. After running the province's finances into the ground, Saskatchewan Party Premier Brad Wall has done what all right-wing politicians do. He's blamed everyone but himself for the mess he's created. And this spring, he brought down one of the harshest austerity budgets we've seen in Canada in years. And it's proved to be a major misstep. The public is starting to turn on Brad Wall, and I think you've all heard of his decision to bail out. He's saying he's going to retire, but he's bailing. We're not sad to see him go. But we've seen this past spring cuts to libraries, public transportation, to senior services, to healthcare, to all the public services. And those cuts have helped mobilize a groundswell. Even more people, including one of our Unifor activists who was part of a very creative act of civil disobedience. They staged a sit-in on the final run of the province's almost 8 decades old intercity bus line that Brad Wall is closing down. They bought a ticket on the last run, and then they refused to get off the bus. They were arrested. So local 2S member Dave Lyons Morgan wants you all to know that handcuffs are heavier than you would expect. But we've used this moment to fan the public backlash and reach out to other anti-austerity groups. Unifor's Stand Up for Your Crowns campaign to protect Saskatchewan crowns from privatization is a very important voice in the growing chorus that is increasingly intolerant of cuts and scandal. But the arrogant Brad Wall government just doesn't get it, and they don't care. Just last month, a story broke that confirmed our worst fears. The government is seeking private partners to sell off a stake in SaskTel, Saskatchewan's public telecom. And more private companies are lining up for their piece of the action as Brad Wall and the Sask Party set up more public assets for giveaway to their friends. In a nutshell, the gloves are off. Brad Wall lied to voters about his privatization plans during the last election, and we're going to spare no effort to publicize that double cross, mobilize our members, and defeat privatization in its tracks. I know we have what it takes to win because that's exactly what we've done in my home province of British Columbia. Woo! I have to brag a little bit about the Herculean efforts of our activists during the BC election. Led by our political action department, we had an excellent plan with terrific data, and we executed magnificently. BC organizers were trained early and got right to work. We focused our resources in ridings where we had density that we knew was going to be a close race. And the right-wing BC Liberals, please don't ever confuse them with their federal namesake. They are right of Stephen Harper, just viciously right-wing. They outspent the NDP 5-1. And they have deep corporate pockets, and they certainly didn't go quietly. But the fact that it was a razor-thin margin really underscores this point, that the political action of our union does affect real change, and indeed it changes governments. So I want to do a call out to our kick-ass political action coordinators. By E-Day, we had 100 people on the ground, so I'm going to talk about the people who did the coordinating of that whole army, boots on the ground. So we had Krista Lee Monroe, Simon Lau, and Jim Saddlemeyer. Can you stand? Margaret Olau, please stand, Margaret, if you're here. Louise Fontanese and Richard Wise. This was the group that coordinated over 100 folks. And it was our entire union that was mobilized for the election. If you've seen the photo montage, the BC Regional Council, all the local leaders, our members, everyone was out, the staff were out. It was a really, really Herculean effort, so thank you. You've made change happen in British Columbia. As you know, we have a new premier. His name is John Horgan, and he's the BC NDP leader. So I like to joke that you guys get the summer off, but we all know our work doesn't end there. Like in Alberta, we have to work to keep the government, the NDP in government, and that's going to be just as strategic, just as difficult, but just as fun as winning elections. We have many other highlights in the Western region. There have been lots and lots of important rounds of bargaining and much principled work undertaken right across the region in every sector. But of course, this year hasn't been all roses. Unifor members have struggled with determination and dignity through curtailments, layoffs, and closures. And you heard Brother Don Bai yesterday afternoon talk about Port Alice. This past year, we've seen a multitude of bargaining struggles, job fights, work to advance equity issues, and important union-building priorities taking place. I want to take time here to thank Mohammed Al-Sadi, Kassan Kashi, and Christina Macklin-Mitchell for all your work on the equity audit. And thank you to the delegates for the unanimous adoption of our President's equity recommendations on Friday. The advisory panel is going to be tasked with continuing this vital work to become an organization that is truly reflective and representative of our members. And whatever we can do in the West to support and advance the work of the panel, you can count on us. We also know that bargaining is a powerful tool for addressing equity, and we had many bargaining struggles that went right down to the wire. Sometimes we need to exercise our right to strike. This past year, we've had one lockout/strike in the region in July. It was Local 686B in Chetwynd, BC at an Enersol plant. The dispute lasted 10 days. There were very aggressive employer attempts at concessions, and our members stood strong and pushed back and got a fair collective agreement. So congratulations to 686B for your strength in fighting back. In BC this summer, tens of thousands of families were displaced by wildfires across the interior, over 100 of which are still raging as we sit here. Heartfelt thanks to the National Executive Board, to all the regional councils, to the Social Justice Fund, to the locals and individuals who dug deep to contribute to the Red Cross. Between us, we've contributed more than $320,000 to the relief efforts, and this was so important, a show of solidarity to our many members who were impacted in communities across the region. I also want to acknowledge we had a member fatality in Kamloops at the Domtar Mill this year. We lost brother Jim McLeod, a beloved brother out of Local 10B in a workplace accident. It's always heartbreaking when we lose a loved one this way, and we are committed as a union and resolved to work tirelessly to make our work as safe as possible. So I'm going to be wrapping up and showing a short animated video. Before I wrap up, a few more comments about the work we've undertaken. The work we've undertaken in the West mirrors the work all of you are doing everywhere, and it's fitting that we're meeting this weekend under the banner of Solidarity for a Better World in the home of the 1919 Winnipeg Strike. The Winnipeg General Strike is a landmark by any measure. From mid-May to late June 1919, for 6 weeks, the bulk of the city's workforce walked off the job and risked hunger, blacklisting, police, and military repression. In May of 2019, we'll be marking the 100th anniversary of the general strike here in Winnipeg. It's a defining piece of our labor legacy and a legacy of collective action and solidarity. And in recognition of that, we're holding our prayer council here in 2019, and you're all welcome to join us. Our bargaining, our political action, our passion for equity and justice is rooted in solidarity. Yes, we have energetic activists, kick-ass regional councils, dedicated locals, a powerhouse national president, but alone, none of us can achieve what we can achieve when we work together. So I urge everyone to keep this principle in action. Engage and build cohesion in your membership, build bridges to progressive organizations in your communities, reach out across generations, and in the West, we're going to take this challenge very seriously. And I have a world of confidence in Unifor members to deliver. It's been a privilege and an honor to work with you this year, and I love standing with you in this struggle. So thank you. I spoke earlier about our Saskatchewan Stand Up for Our Crowns campaign. The campaign is headed into a second phase this fall with our launch on the Labor Day weekend. Jerry spoke about the Brad Wall Liar billboards. We're going to also have television ads, rallies, town halls, membership mobilization, and a president's meeting planned for the fall. But before we roll our video, I want to take this opportunity to give great thanks to Paige Kazima, our badass Saskatchewan political action coordinator extraordinaire. For her work on this Stand Up Crowns campaign. She's kept us coordinated, headed in the right direction this past year. Paige is returning to her university studies this fall to pursue her master's degree. Thank you, Paige. So I'm going to cue rolling the video. This is an animation that is a take on a very old fable about human folly and greed.
Unifor presents There Once Was a Goose Named Crowns. Go to mycrowns.ca.